All right, Greg is in Everton Park, which of course is in Brisbane. Let's have a chat to him. G'day, Greg. What do you want to talk about tonight?
G'day, Paul. Paul, I just wanted to say if Australia should be self-sufficient in everything, in what's happening around the world at the moment, and you can still have your free trade and everything there, but we still should be self-sufficient in everything. And for the government to support the farmers, as in, if you've got a going concern on a farm that's a proven going concern through drought, flood or anything, the government should just support that farm no matter what.
Well, good on you, Greg. Appreciate it. Look, I can see a couple of downsides to what you're talking about, but what do you think, Kristy?
Look, I think as well that, agriculture has always been a bit of a protected industry in Australia, as it is in the United States. And because it has that history in our economic policy, that there will always be people who want to see that continued. I'm for farmers. I think we should protect the Australian agricultural industry. And when we do negotiate free trade agreements, and I've worked on 3 of them now with the former Trade Minister Andrew Robb, we do consult heavily with the Australian agricultural sector, and the objective of them is to get Australian farmers the best deal that they possibly can. I think it's the very first time we tried to sell Australian beef to the Japanese, and of course beef is sacrosanct to Japanese trade, and they weren't going to give us any ground on that. So there is a significant level of negotiation that goes into getting the best deal for Aussie farmers in these agreements.
But also, I mean, look, there's a reality here. As much as I would love to say that everything could be made in Australia, we could become completely self-sufficient, that everything from, televisions people are watching us on right now, to cars, to clothes, and I would love that to be the case. But obviously the costs of doing that make it far more expensive than the stuff that is made very cheaply and made at such size it can be sold around the world, which is why they become a $10 pair of shorts.
That's right, and free trade has meant that cost of living is lower for more people, but there are always sort of winners and losers in those trade deals, and it's one of those things that if you were an automotive worker and over the last few years that sector has been shut down, you probably wouldn't feel like free trade had done you any favours at all.
100%.
But we do look after the agricultural sector, rightly so. There's still a pretty good prospect if we can get our water right, that we can become the food bowl of Asia into the next century. So, look, it's worth pursuing that we look after our farmers. I think the government's actually done a pretty good job in terms of trying to help people through the drought. But it's more, what do we do about water into the longer term? And that's for wiser heads than mine.
Well, also, just the absolute truth, right, is that you can't have globalisation both ways. Now, I think you should absolutely have nations, you should have borders, you should have cultures, you should defend your traditions, you should make sure that you can support your local industries, no questions about that stuff. But if you want to live in a world where you pick up a phone and expect to be able to have a video call with somebody on the other side of the world, if you expect the ability to go for a holiday in Disneyland with ease that your parents and maybe family members didn't, there are downsides to that. Equally so, if you run a tourism business, there's only 25 million people in the country. They're not all at one point going to be on holiday. You need people to be coming from other parts of the world. So I'm not here making great apologies for sort of globalisation. It has massive downsides for Australia, but we can't sort of go back to an era where we were disconnected from the rest of the world while sitting in the 21st century where we have hyper interconnectivity to the rest of the world.
We can't become Pyongyang either. Look, if you want to be a hermit state, then there's a bigger price to pay than what we do.
Right, Rob.